Carlos and Fred. Anyone else from the team who's here today need to be promoted?
I believe Thea Salka.
Okay, I'm not seeing Thea in the list, the attendee list quite yet. So
Okay.
I'll keep my eyes peeled for her.
Thanks.
If Laura is on, if you could promote her as well.
She just denied my request. So
Oh.
I'll promote her again.
Okay. I know that she's not feeling well, so that could be part of it. So yeah.
No worries. And Thea just showed up, so let me promote her too. We'll also just need to wait a few more minutes, a couple more minutes. There's Linda, okay, and your project planner is coming momentarily as well. So everyone in the audience, everyone on the panel already, just hang tight for a moment. We are almost ready to begin virtual meetings year 3. Okay. So welcome, everyone. This is our Development Review Committee meeting of November 16th. And I'll start with a quick roll call. I'm Rebecca Shapiro. I chair this committee. I'm joined today by Linda Poncini. Russ Sherman will not be joining us today for the DRC meeting. We have 2 items, but before I dive into the review part of our agenda, I just want to read our required announcement around virtual readings. During this declared state of emergency, this meeting will be conducted in accordance with California Government Code 54953E as authorized by resolution of the City Council. You can contact the city clerk at city.clerk@mountainview.gov to obtain a copy of the applicable resolution. And everyone at this meeting today will be participating by video conference with no physical meeting location. As a point of information, we have already had action by City Council indicating that we'll continue virtual meetings through December 15th. And tentatively, the expectation is that we're likely to continue virtual meetings into 2023 as well. Possibly resuming in-person meetings in February, but we'll make announcements at this hearing level as we know more. As a reminder to folks who are participating in the audience today, if you're interested in providing comment on any item, you'll have an opportunity to do so after a brief presentation from the applicant team on each item. If you're participating through the Zoom web interface or app interface, you can use the raise hand function when asked if you'd like to speak. And if you're participating by phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself when called upon. So with that, the first item on our agenda today is 1020 Terabella Avenue. This is a 100% affordable residential development coming to the DRC for the second time, and we anticipate the last time for some final review and recommendations. I will turn it over to the applicant team for a presentation of anything that you'd like to share with us.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. Lily, are you able to take the screen? Great. All right, if everyone can see what we're showing on the screen, this is a graphic illustrating what we last talked about with Development Review Committee on the left-hand side in late April. It may look familiar. It's a building fronting Terabella Ave. It is U-shaped. The general concept of the building is a sort of bookends on both ends. And through that conversation and other meetings with the city, there have been some changes based on that review. And the main changes involve the corner massing at the lobby, where the angled feature at the main lobby is now comes completely down to grade. It emphasizes the angle. and it kind of makes the corner cleaner and also reinforces that idea of these bookends. So that is a significant difference. The other thing which was mentioned was trying to lighten the base of the frontage of the building. And so a railing was introduced, which really is highlighting, kind of showing that it's a little bit lighter. It offers a bit more connection back up to the podium open space. And it creates a little bit more of a vertical visual on the base. In addition to that, the window patterning has been altered, and windows are increased in area, so particularly on the corners, so they're a little bit lighter. There's a little bit more glazing to solid wall ratio, which has been included. In addition to that, the color palette has been adjusted so that there's a stronger connection between the base and the mid-bar of the building, so there's more consistency there. The mid-bar setback on the podium has also been articulated a bit more to break that mass down. Those were the significant changes since we last met. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is just a detail shot of the entry configuration, and what this shows is the way that angled mass comes to grade. The large canopy still defines the entry. The lobby is more distinct. There's a little bit more glazing. It relates directly down to the plaza, which is located at the corner. And then right behind it, you can kind of see where the podium breaks on the left-hand side with these rail features. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, the other thing I should mention, you can see it here as well, is that the corner windows have also been expanded and the patterning varied a bit more. This is the night shot. And again, it shows this idea about this kind of lantern effect on the corner, so that you do have that lobby and that expanded area out to the plaza, where it includes these interactive play features to make the public space as engaging as we can. And we'll touch on that in a little more detail. Let's go to the next one. This is looking at the plaza a little bit further down, and the main entry is on the right-hand side of this image. You can see the canopy up above. That's the main plaza, and the way the plaza stretches down, this is where the bike room is located. It shows the shift in palette, the color palette as well, where the main mass carries all the way through the stoops in that back wall, which is also included. Let's go to the next slide. You'll see that again here. So this shows the adjustment in materials and color palette, where the back wall of the stoops is now consistent. That mass reads all the way through at the back wall of the stoop. We've also adjusted the angles of the roof. It doesn't read in this image because we're so close to the stoop, but it has a little bit more of a residential feel with the angled roofs. When you're a little further away, this shows that landscape buffer between your private residential porch, if you will, and the sidewalk. Next one, please, Lily. An image at night. You can see the revised color palette here. This again just shows the stoop, the way this will feel a bit. Also at the top, it shows a bit of the way that rail reads, where it's lightened a bit and cut above the stoop area to get that, to get that transparency back up to the podium level. Next one, please, Lily. Oh, this is Lily. You want to jump in and go over this?
Sure, I can go over this. So another element we are working on are developing different little programmatic themed areas along the Tarabella frontage. The general concept is an interactive learn through play oriented towards families. And we're working on various different interactive educational concepts in these different highlighted locations along the Tarabella frontage, with one in particular, the most developed is here at the plaza. We have a at-grade allemanic sundial where the person themselves is the one casting the shadow to tell the time. And we're intending to incorporate some educational signage to go along with that to communicate how that sundial works, understanding of the basic seasons, and how the orientation and location of the sun versus the earth and the tilt of the earth it impacts our seasons. And as I said, we are developing discrete little programmatic areas at each of these locations highlighted here, and working through with that, but the general theme with them all will be learn through play to engage both the residents and the local community. And if I can click the next, there we go. This is another view of that plaza entry, and you can see in a bit more detail the Elementic sundial here. It is at grade, completely flush at the plaza to make sure to not provide any obstruction to the plaza space, but provide the interactivity right in the central area. And then adjacent to it, we have a proposed sculptural element that with some signage wrapping the post below that again helps communicate the seasonal impacts of the sun and earth locations. And the last thing we want to touch on is just kind of taking you through the color palette changes that have occurred since the April formal planning submittal. On the top left, you see the base formal planning submittal color palette. Below that, we had the alternative, slightly cooler tones. For the NOFA submittal, we went with the original base planning submittal color palette with the gray changed to a warmer earthen tone based on DRC feedback, and also incorporate additional glazing elements at the corners and adding a bit more detail there. Following that, with city and also city council comments, we developed this set below, which is the latest formal planning submittal in September.
So that's it for our formal presentation. We're happy to open it up to questions or discussion, or if the Alta team has anything to add, please jump in.
No, we have nothing to add right now. Just be happy to hear the feedback and questions.
Great, thank you, everyone. Just before we dive into any DRC questions and feedback, I'm gonna quickly turn to the audience. I think many of the folks there in the audience today are associated with one or both of these projects on the agenda, but does anyone in the audience have any comments or questions they'd like to share on this particular project? If so, please raise your hand now, raise hand function, or *9 if you're phoning in. Okay, no hands are raised. I guess everyone loves it. So I will just bring it back to Linda and I and you guys for some discussion and further questions. I think we will definitely end up talking some about color today, which is, I think, one of the hardest things to talk about at DRC, whether we're in person or not, just because of the ability to reproduce. You know, the planned colors can be really challenging, but we'll muddle through. And I think, you know, we have some hopefully very clear thoughts for the team today to take with you and carry forward. But we usually will start with any site plan related feedback that we have. Before I jump into some of those topics, Linda, did you have any questions, particularly any site related questions that you had for the development team?
I don't think I had questions. No, not any questions.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll just kick things off on the site and landscape. I know you didn't spend too much time going over the details of that, and I know that some of it is still in progress, but I think the strategy and ideas that you've presented today definitely have carried things forward very well from where we were last time DRC saw the plans. And, you know, given that this is a family targeted development or family oriented development, and with, you know, the single family neighborhood that you have a little bit further to the south, this seems like it has some good themes, and with the educational information, hopefully we'll also have things that are of interest to parents or other adults in the area. Yeah, I guess one question I have, question/comment, is I know that San Rafael, you know, A, is challenging for you all because of the amount of utility rooms that you have, and, you know, B, is a cul-de-sac. But when I think back to you friends who grew up in suburbia when I was a kid, cul-de-sacs actually could often be kind of active areas. And so I wondered if the team had any thoughts on how or if some aspects of the things that you're planning on Terabella could be pulled around the corner a little bit into the San Rafael frontage. Off the top of my head, as you were presenting, I was like, wow, would there be some sort of informational signage you could pull through? Maybe that was sustainability or energy focused. I was thinking of your PG&E room. Or is there a location where sort of a bench and a planter could be incorporated, sort of maybe around the stair. I just want to make sure that I know it's a challenging frontage, but sometimes when there's such a difference between two frontages, anything you can do to kind of create design synergy can be really beneficial. So I'm seeing this is the challenge exhibit, right?
Yes, it is. It's color coded even because we have different types. Yes, it really is unfortunately heavily impacted by the utilities and the driveway and egress. The area in which that's not really impacted by that is really this corner next to the plaza. So what we're proposing, if I can go back to the, come on arrows, work please. Oh, one moment. There we go. If I can go back to this view, the thought was that we could have this element at the corner on the post that kind of ties in the pullback, but really the further we go down this sidewalk, you basically really have the street tree strip, and that's predominantly what is available, and that is, obviously needs to be the city's, street tree planting along that side there. There is a small green space next to the driveway, between the driveway and the utility rooms, but it's sheltered a bit because of the massing of the building, and it's more of a buffer zone because it is by the egress, the exiting from electrical room, and nestled between the transformer room and the driveway. So it's not really that pleasant of an area. We are greening it up, but it is really an interstitial buffer space. The other thing to consider is directly north of the site is the adjacent property. And so that's going to be something that we'll have to consider in terms of use and play, whether we want to encourage folks to go down this way towards the adjacent property where there's just going to be potentially some traffic, whereas this zone here has a lot more buffer and distance from the street.
Another quick question: are you pulling in any utilities from San Rafael, or are things predominantly? And I'm thinking especially about this sort of northeast corner. I know you have fire access back there, but are there any utilities running along the backside of the building?
We do have some running back there. That's that red buffer, yeah. So it's pretty congested along San Rafael in terms of utilities and egress and stuff like that.
Okay. So yeah,
can I maybe add something? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Clearly, we have a lot of restraints, but I'll float an idea, and I'm apologize beforehand, Alta team, but and you can just say no. But our main restraint on that frontage is obviously space and fixing things and creating obstructions. But maybe there's a possibility to carry this sun movement theme a little bit around the corner, and we might be able to do that, assuming that we may have a photovoltaic system on this building, right? Maybe there's a way of incorporating a meter that shows the carbon offset and the energy saved with the electric meter, so kind of carrying, or with the photovoltaic system that could be visible on that street. And it would kind of in a funny way relate to the electrical room. which is right there. And it makes me think of the Exploratorium in the sense that, there could be like I think that the Exploratorium actually did a big steel cutout that was like an electronic diagram. There was like a circuit diagram of a transformer, that there could be like a graphic with a circuit or something that could actually be represented on the transformer room door, so that it adds a little life around the corner, Rebecca. It would be more informational in a sense. I think that if there's an idea somewhere in there that we might be able to do more as an informational item, less than something that takes a lot of physical space, that might be more achievable.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something to explore, and I think it starts to get at the idea of sort of pulling that like informational, educational, like interact, sort of something that you see and engage with around the corner. So I think, Linda, please chime in if you disagree, but I think along that line.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Alta team, are you going to fire us now, or are we all right?
I would say probably, I think the idea, I like the idea of an interactive thing. We'd have to look at the technology and the maintenance of that. I don't want it to be something that breaks down and never works again. And, it's something that, so we'd have to look into that. But I definitely like the idea of turning the corner and keeping the educational and the idea of the doing something around the electrical room that it makes it, at least gives it some educational purpose. But yeah, definitely would like to also look at something more interactive too.
Yeah, and I think the idea of something that makes the utility doors perhaps a little bit different than your standard, just sort of blend in, could be an idea. I agree with Carlos on the maybe be deliberate with what you look at as far as technology. We don't want something that sort of works for 6 months and then everyone's constantly trying to make it work again. But maybe one of the solutions could be something I know more and more people are doing, like sort of QR codes connected to websites. So if you have like a development site, there could be an informational panel, a little bit of explanation, like this building has XX solar panels that produce, I think there's something there. And I think you guys get the idea of trying to pull a little bit of that interest around the corner and not Cinderella San Rafael. Too much. I think that another couple of recommendations we have, and we're not going to sort of micromanage all of this at today's meeting, but I know staff has some detailed review that they've been doing of tree planting and things like that, and some ideas for perhaps a few more locations where we might be able to get some additional tree canopy into the site. So we would encourage you just to continue to work with staff on your tree planting plan to see if we can get a couple more frontage trees in. And the one other place I would love to get an additional tree, if we can find a way, is in the San Rafael streetscape. I know you mentioned things are really tight back there. I think my experience is that if we can get 5 feet of offset from the utility line, we can usually squeeze in a tree. So if it is possible to squeeze something in that northeast corner in the landscape strip, I think it would be really nice. And it seems to kind of correspond to the spacing you have already for the street trees on San Rafael. And I think the one other area of focus that caught our eye is that area, the driveway area along San Rafael in particular. And I appreciate the revisions. I don't think you highlighted them to the stair and canopy around there. I think it's definitely an improvement. The thing that I think that keeps on catching my eye, and I think Linda agrees, is that there doesn't really seem to be a clear differentiation or separation of the pedestrian paths in the driveway. So we'd like for you to look at that. Some ideas that occurred to us, and this is actually something that a project I was working on recently ended up proposing, completely uninstigated by me, was they created this kind of like low railing that and sort of a narrow planting area. Like I don't think it was more than about a foot, where they were able to get some vines or lower ground cover that kind of related to the railing. And so like on the stair side of that driveway, just from a sort of a safety perspective, we thought it might make sense to extend the railing forward low enough that it doesn't, block car visibility, but to create a little bit more of a barrier between the egress path and the driveway as you come out to the public sidewalk. And then, yeah, looking if we can sort of kind of etch out a little bit of growing space along those paths, just to soften it up so it's not 20 plus feet plus another 12 feet of paving or whatever the sidewalk widths are. And I think that actually wraps things up on site and landscape design. I think you guys are already familiar with the city's 75% native planting target, so I'm not gonna say much more about that. Linda, Edgar, am I forgetting anything?
I think that was it. I think the only thing we did talk about in the briefing was where the pedestrian path crosses across the driveway. Again, you were talking about the small separation with some vines, but there's also a textural change, which might be a good idea just to warn pedestrians and to also warn cars that there's going to be a location where pedestrians and cars are going to be crossing paths. And so if it all ends up with a matching pattern, it would be easier for someone to not pay attention and not notice that cars are going to be coming across there. So I think that's, it's a design detail and something you can work with your landscape architect and engineers and they can, I'm sure, come up with a really good solution to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the things that I haven't heard mentioned, we used to have someone who'd come to DRC and was very interested in sort of design that could cue visually impaired folks about what's going on around them. And so, yeah, I think along the frontages, maybe something at that driveway interface. I'm not an expert in those details, might be worthwhile just because there are a number of intersecting ped paths. So finding a way to delineate the vehicle surface might be beneficial.
Rebecca,
So
did we highlight on the kind of the piano notes there on the middle U section of the building? I was taking notes here. I don't recall if we discussed that.
well, I think we haven't gotten to the building yet. So
Okay.
I was just doing a roundup on any site or landscape comments that are outstanding. But it sounds like we're wrapped up there. Yeah, I think on the building side, I guess where to start. Yeah, I think I appreciate how open you guys have been to what has been an iterative process that has, I think, brought you a lot of input from a variety of sources. And so you've had a bit of a challenge trying to sort of pull things together and sort of maintain sort of a coherence to your design strategy and while you're adapting things. I think I'd like to start with maybe surprisingly the easier topic, which is the color scheme. And Linda, I'm gonna kick it over to you because I think you had a good way of putting it.
Well, I think again, it's always a challenge looking at color drawings on all of our different without knowing exactly what the colors are with the with color chips in front of me. But it seemed to me that when you go back to that 429 formal planning submittal alternative, the colors were lighter and a little more interesting with that reddish color in there, burgundy or a red, reddish brown, almost a Corten color. In the current submittal, I feel like it's getting dark, and right now, what I'm seeing on my screen, the grays and that really dark gray and then the lighter gray, it seems like a little dark and a little bit dreary. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think there needs to be more life and interest in the colors that are selected. And it may just be a matter of warming it up a little bit. But it does feel quite cold to me. And that was my concern in looking at it. And I think that things could be done, like in some of the recesses, those angled walls, things like that could introduce a really interesting color pop to the building without it becoming too silly. So I think that that's something that you'll want to continue to work on with staff as you develop it along. I think it does need some brightening up, some more interest to it. And there was one of the examples that you showed on, I think it might have been sheet 1105, that it showed the example of a sample of what that siding was like, and the windows had yellow on them, and again, it was on a kind of grayish background, and it looked really great. So I don't know what kind of discussions you've had internally design wise about adding some color pops to the building, and in the elements that recess into windows or that go back and forth. But I think that is something to keep working on. So that was my reaction to it, and seeing that reddish color from the April submittal appealed to me more than what we're seeing now, which appears to just be two different shades of gray. Perhaps there's more blue to it than is apparent on my screen. But I would say that for me is an important factor. And again, it's paint. So there shouldn't be, huge cost impacts for looking at different colorways to deal with on this building and make it more interesting, especially since it's family housing, and it's going to be more interesting to the families living there. But that was one main thing. And then I don't know if we want to just jump into talking about the windows yet, but I think also
hold on, just to
sure.
to kind of like loop up what Linda was commenting on. I think there's a light, there's a dark charcoal or charcoal gray, which is your metal color, and it's that primary corner, and then you have a sort of a complementary color to the fiber cement materials that picks up on that gray. And I think that's the color those are the colors that we're talking about are reading a bit dark to us, particularly the charcoal gray, and that, so recommendation number one is looking at lightening or sort of warming up that particular color sequence. And then I think the sense that we got from the revised plan is that you were sort of aiming for something that had sort of a more neutral more neutral wall kind of condition. And our secondary reaction to that is we can understand that maybe folks might have thought, the earlier submittals were too busy. And so simplifying things a little bit is often something that we recommend at DRC, but the loss of any kind of brighter accent color really caught our eye. I know folks sometimes, ding affordable developments for having, like that quintessential, I've heard it referred to as like affordable housing yellow or whatever. That's a matter of opinion for sure, but I can understand the sensitivity to that. But I think everyone on the DRC had found that example photo that you had where there was sort of a neutral wall color with sort of a simple and kind of like sophisticated accent. That finding that sort of simple, sophisticated, brighter accent and sort of with an even hand, sort of deliberately sprinkling that in the project, I think is going to liven it up a little bit. And maybe it's as simple as, looking at that accent trim that's part of the proposal, maybe that corresponds to the the railing colors, and sort of there maybe are just like fewer locations where you have that poppy color, but it stands out a bit more because you've simplified the palette otherwise. So 2 recommendations are that dark color, fine tuning it to be sort of a little lighter, a little warmer, and then second recommendation is finding a way to sort of introduce, perhaps not as plentifully as the earlier submittals, a brighter accent color, to just bring some color back into the design. And yeah, I think, Linda, if you wanted to talk about the window, I think again, some of the material and color comments that we have are a combination of questions and recommendations, and I think those are more straightforward to talk through. So yeah, if you wanted to talk about the windows next, that sounds good to me, Linda.
Yeah, so if we could go to that sheet, I believe it's 11.5. 11.50.
I think it's your color palette or material
Yes,
palette.
the color palette sheet.
Sorry, I have the different document open. Give me one moment, please.
Yep. So this is an introductory statement, as we wanted to touch on some of the information that we found on that sheet, particularly around alternative options. And our presumption was that these are things that the team is considering in view of cost issues. So we do have some sort of thoughts and recommendations and questions associated with those alternative options, just because we do think that it has potential ramifications for the design.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. So on this, to the windows, number 5, aluminum windows, and then it says alternate vinyl windows. Well, the photograph of these aluminum windows shows a white window. Everything on the elevations makes the windows look like they are either dark bronze or black. And then when you go over to the material and color palette, it says aluminum windows, aluminum finish. So it isn't real clear as to what you're thinking in terms of the finish on the aluminum. What my interpretation of the color elevations and the renderings is that you would have either a black or a very dark bronze sash in the aluminum windows. The photograph shows a white, or possibly it could be clear aluminum, and then the written document, if it means clear aluminum. So there's some confusion there. And that would be one question I'd like to know what your intent is and what your preference is. The second item being the alternative of vinyl windows. And I'm assuming that would be a cost issue. Vinyl windows will not have the crisp appearance that aluminum windows will. They will also not have that nice crisp return that you're showing in that photograph. I don't know how you would deal with that issue with vinyl windows. If you were trying to finish that return with a piece of trim, I think it's going to really change the appearance and you won't get your nice, clean, more contemporary statement. There are also a huge range of quality factors and detailing with vinyl windows. Some of them do look quite good and they have more square corners and more square extrusions. The less expensive ones have more rounded extrusions, and they might work in the Spanish style building. They would not work in this building with a more contemporary and crisp detailing. So from that standpoint, I would be fairly concerned about saying vinyl window alternative would be fine. I'm not sure it would be from a design standpoint. And so I just wanted to have a discussion about what your design intent is and how you're thinking about what color that the aluminum windows would be. What is the finish on the windows? Is it black? Is it dark browns anodized? Is it white? Is it clear anodized?
And
I
then
get-
building,
Oh,
yeah, and then
sorry.
building on that, like if you had given some thought to how you might, give a similar or effective window detail if the alternative vinyl windows were proposed.
Mhm.
So
to
let
Linda's.
let me take the vinyl versus aluminum question, because Linda, we really agree in many ways with your assessment. Our preference is to go with aluminum windows.
Mhm.
And part of that is because aluminum windows, they're available in a panning frame, right? So you get a jam extension
Right.
and you get the depth.
Right.
So when but for prudence and kind of what's going on out there in the market and just materials right now, procurement is kind of all over the map. We go in and we base it on and price it on and get a sub lined up to put in aluminum windows, and then they can't get them and deliver it in time to actually close the building. We're facing this on many projects in construction right now. So
Mhm.
we need to build in a little flexibility. But the other point is clearly a vinyl window is less expensive to purchase. But the way we detail that is we actually recess it in the walls. We add a trim, so it's a 2x6 wall. We add a trim that's a 2x3 or a 2x4, and then the nail flange gets recessed. So you get the return and you get the depth that we like, because it just makes the building read a little bit better. And then some vinyl manufacturers, for example, VPI windows, which is our base spec for vinyl, they actually offer a crisp profile because we have the exact same concerns there. Depending on the manufacturer, they get ugly, frankly. So
Yes. Thank you.
VPI, and if you were interested in an example, the building that we built at 1701 El Camino Real, Eagle Park with Alta Housing, that has vinyl VPI windows detailed and recessed in a punch. And that was done for budget for budget purposes. Now, it depends on the builders, because some builders, because of that fussiness around the framing and
Right.
the waterproofing, they'll say, no, that's not going to save us any money. We want to go with the aluminum. The upcharge is worth the installation, but we need to have that flexibility. So I just wanted to parse that discussion a little bit.
There's one more note to that, Fred.
Go ahead, Lily.
One of the primary reasons we are listing it as an alternate is because of the new energy code, and it may be required that we have that for performance. That is one of the key reasons why we are listing it. We may be required to do so to meet the new energy code.
I think that's a good point as the envelopes get upped.
Good point. Yeah.
So I think I would just add to close the loop on that. I think you guys have been persuasive, at least to me, in a lot of ways. But what I'd like to see is a little bit more specificity in in the sort of alternate concept, as far as, you know, maybe identifying it as a sort of VPI vinyl window and providing an alternate detail as well, that allows us to see how you'll sort of approximate or give a sort of a comparable appearance with an alternate spec to, you know, what we're reviewing in this design as shown based on the aluminum window. And that's likely the best path forward on that particular item.
I think that's great if you know, if you can work with staff and provide more details and photographs maybe of some of the installations you've had and that kind of thing, so that everybody can understand what the potentials are of it, you know. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I have an image up of a vinyl of Eagle Park and the vinyl installation. If you want to look at it real quick, Linda, would that be helpful?
Sure.
Can I take the screen real quick?
You should be able to-
All right, thank you. Hold on one sec. Let me know when you can see it. I hope it works. You see it?
Okay.
All right.
Mhm.
Is
And
it
it's-
the-
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Rebecca.
I was gonna say, I think the corner is metal, is that right? Or is everything vinyl?
Everything's vinyl. I mean, I should wait, sorry, the ground floor is storefront, aluminum
Sure.
storefront. Everything above is vinyl.
It's vinyl.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
these are VPI.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Okay.
we just had to pull VPI from a project because they couldn't make the schedule. So that's the way. I think we would have to write something VPI or equal,
Or equal,
something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
I think that would be okay.
Yeah.
And the alternate detail as far like showing the you know, showing the target shape and how, and again, sort of how you would treat that return.
Mhm.
that reveal.
How you treat that return, yeah. All right, thank you. That's good, thank you. And then just to close the loop on the question of color, what was the intent on the color of the windows, of the window frames?
And this is where I'm going to ask for a little help because Lily, can you help me here?
Unfortunately, because of the number of changes we've had to different color palettes, I can't remember where we ended up. We've gone back and forth on both. So we're open to either, I guess.
So you can work with that with staff on that.
I think so. We've only shown the limited color palettes here. I can say that we've had many internally reviewed. So yeah, we can absolutely work with staff on that detail and color.
Right. And the final colors that you settle on, you know, that could change. You know, it could change what would look
Uniform.
best, whether it's something
Exactly.
dark or something light. Yeah.
And that's, I think,
Okay,
why
thank you.
it's
Thank you.
varied. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I think that's sensible. My gut says we're likely to end up with a darker window given the design, which sounds like a weird thing to say because we were just talking about how dark the design is, but I agree, it would make sense to work the wall colors and then see what makes sense as far as the window color.
Yeah.
And I think the last material item we're going to talk about is the alternate proposal for the fiber cement panel. And maybe first off with the question, the idea with the EFIS material is that it would only replace the panels, not the hardy siding. Is that correct? Or can you clarify what the intent is there?
Fred?
Sorry, Rebecca. Alternative exterior, oh, I see. Okay, for this fiber cement panels. I thought that, yeah, I don't know that it's going to be EFIS or a plaster finish. Essentially, it looks the same, right? But what we're also finding is that the fiber cement panels, like Hardy, for example, just discontinued their panel product, their panel line that we used on 950 El Camino, right? That's that Hardy system with the reveals. They just discontinued it. So this was an exterior plaster, or in this case, exterior insulation finish. You're able to get the nice reveals and get that rhythm set up like a panel. And that was why we're wanting that flexibility again, depending on what's available and the bidding climate to what we might be able to use there. And ephes itself is more what's behind the plaster, right?
Okay, so the lap siding would remain. It's more about the panel product that occurs in.
Yeah, we want the texture of the lap siding.
Mhm.
We thought that was important.
And I think we also were wondering about your experience with finishes on ephes material. Like Linda was sharing with me earlier that she's had experiences that have really just resulted in a rougher and less attractive exterior surface on ephes. And I think that would run counter to the design of this particular building. So could you share what your experience has been with some of the ephes products you've used?
Well, ephes hasn't been on the market it was on the market, it was pulled from the market, it's been back on for a few years. They have a pretty wide variety of finishes available. So you can get a very smooth finish, and then they offer all kinds of textures as well. They make brick textures. They make very heavily like a linear recess texture. So those are available, but you can get a very smooth finish as well.
All right.
This is, yeah.
The idea would be that it would be more on the smoother end if you did end up
Smooth,
going
right.
with this product.
Yeah, I mean, if we used ephes, if we used stucco, we would exterior plaster. We would be trying to push get it as smooth as we can.
Okay.
Right, yeah. I think that's the thing, that getting it as smooth as possible would be the key, because in a way it doesn't matter, if it's made out of peanut butter, if it meets code, but it needs to have that final finish that looks correct. And in terms of that cleaner appearance, so that, and the consistency across the elevation, where you don't all of a sudden get an area that's all thick and fuzzy and bumpy, and then right next to it, because they stopped the day before and they started up again the next day, and different guys were out there. So I think that it's what you end up with your final appearance is what we're concerned about. So that's one of the things that will, be the proof in the pudding, as they say, to get it, to get the correct finish on it. And I think that's where the ephes would be acceptable to me, if there was real strong wording about the final finish.
Okay, and maybe this is a note for us, Lily, is to try to include a sample of,
Rebecca,
or at least a
that's
photo
how I
of.
feel about it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I would update it similarly, kind of similar to the vinyl windows, with a little bit more specificity on the goal. It sounds like you're also, you may consider a plaster, so I would update the alternate proposal here and provide a little bit more detail on like the finish goal and photo example. Ultimately, sort of the final composition, we'll have an opportunity to review, and that includes the color changes that we've been talking about through our mock-up inspections, which you all are familiar with. So that'll be the final proof in the pudding, I think, is something to put it. But yeah, if in the meanwhile we can update the alternative just to be a little bit more clear about what we're considering and proceeding with if needed, that would be beneficial.
Yeah. I think that was all of my comments. I think the project's coming along very well.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess there was one other aspect, Rebecca, that you wanted to talk about with the area that's above the podium or above the deck, the outdoor deck, that back wall, south facing wall, and how those different pop outs are assembled.
Yeah, Lily, could you zoom in on the upper right image a bit? I think that's going to be the best one for the purposes of this final point or discussion point. Perfect. So yeah, I think the previous proposal was simpler in some ways in that it was a quiet volume that was accented by windows, and the revisions I think are trying to address some of the comments that we heard earlier about like some boxiness and flatness, I think, in the design. At least that was my supposition about the origins of this change. But I think both Linda and I felt that we understood that these bump outs were aligning with the larger living room window locations, but the overall pattern felt awkward. It varied widths. I mean, it's not 100% symmetrical facade, but the pattern was just irregular in a way that struck us as awkward. I don't know, Linda, if that captures your viewpoint as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the point being is that there's one bump out that's 2 windows wide and one bump out that's 1 window wide. And so, it's like, well, why are they different? Why aren't they the same? Can you flip one around and make it 2 windows wide? I understand it's related to the floor plans themselves of that of those living room windows. So then it gets more and more and more complicated in trying to just flip it around and make them both the same width, or make it feel more like a rhythm. Right now, it doesn't seem to feel like a comfortable rhythm. And I don't know, to me, it's something that you might have to scratch your head about because it feels a little uncomfortable.
Can I ask a couple
But
questions?
without having to you wouldn't want to have to rework your entire floor plan, to try to make that work. I just think it's a little difficult.
But yeah, Fred, go ahead. You said you had a question.
Yeah, I do. I mean, Rebecca, we just had this conversation yesterday, and I mean, are we trying to push this too much? Is the simpler approach of just the clean middle bar, working on the contrasting trim set up more closely to where we were? Is that going to be a more successful approach? Because I mean, we could look at the Bay Rhythm. It would add program kind of to bedroom areas to get more Bay Rhythm. But would it be better, as we're looking at the palette, to just consider the simpler bar in the back?
I mean, I'll maybe, Linda, jump in if you disagree. Maybe study a couple different things. Like if you're working with the palette and you find that when you start to add an accent color in, or if it seems appropriate to add the accent color in on that trim again, and it doesn't work with like a revised take on where you might put these projecting forms, then maybe that's a reason to say, yeah, let's revert to a simpler mass. Maybe sort of another alternative is like a different configuration that's less oriented towards where you have these living room windows, and that could be something like maybe you just have a pop out here, which roughly aligns with something that's happening in the base anyway, and at the corners, and then the areas sort of here and the areas here are the darker accent color. Maybe you have articulation, but you don't have color change. Another option that occurred to us actually was inspired a little bit by the photo example you have from the sort of yellow accent window on your color page, which was thinking, which has this setup of kind of a darker recessive plane at the top and the bottom. And if that was sort of your canvas, then maybe the pop outs have a different orientation. Like maybe the pop outs are kind of more aligned with what's happening at the building base. And it's not like fully symmetrical, but it has like some relationship, and you maybe can tie it to the edges of some of the staggered windows. But I think we saw how incorporating some articulation could be effective and actually could have a relationship to what you're doing in the building base. But it was too different, I think, from what was happening below it. And the pattern that was created was a little awkward. So I would say, yeah, I think one option would be to simplify and remove some, if not all, of the areas that you're showing here. But an alternative would be maybe to combine them in a slightly different format than what you're showing, to have like a different relationship to what's happening down below. And like I said, that photo example could give you a starting point there. I think you have two options, and that what we would recommend, because I don't think that we can solve it at the meeting today, is you study a couple options and work with staff to see what you think is most effective in the long run. I don't think that the DRC in the past sort of was overly concerned, because you were doing so much with the landscape of the podium, and because that window accent that you had was really nice and attractive, and the simple wall condition really helped sell the window accent. But we can also see value for adding articulation. It's just it wasn't feeling comfortable and cohesive with the design as shown in the 927 formal submittal.
And I think maybe the I'm going to call them pop outs, but the pop outs that happen at the corner of that facade, I think could be fine, and sort of frames that middle part. The other thing that crossed my mind was the fact that wall is really south facing, and maybe it's just a matter of adding some sunshades above the windows with some color on the sunshades, just something to sort of enliven that elevation. May not have to do these additional pop outs. So
I think we do have sunshades on that wall at the living rooms where the larger windows are, right?
well, I'm just
Ellie?
thinking about all the way across, or maybe in more areas,
One at the top.
or something that just kind of creates a pattern back there. They wouldn't. I mean, it could kind of be arbitrary. Yes.
Okay, I see now.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so it's like at the living rooms.
Yeah.
But there might be other places you could introduce one random here or there, so it becomes sort of like what was that game, Tetris? Sort of like something like that. But yeah, I think my feeling about it is that those two pop outs in the middle, the two windows and the one window wide, it seems like that's a lot of work for not a lot of really great effect. That's the best way I can say it. That it would probably add, extra cost to the project, and I'm not sure it's really doing what we hoped it might. So
Yeah, so I think our final recommendations there are again, let's work the color, the
Yeah.
color revisions, and then let's study if there's a better pattern of these articulating forms that we feel like gets at some of the concerns that we've heard from the community and decision makers about boxiness. But I think a good fallback, if we can get a high quality color accent, is something that's closer to the original concept. And that can be the fallback plan. I think we've talked through a couple options that you might want to look at as far as a different composition of those bump outs. And I'd like to see where we can get with that first before kind of throwing out the idea. If we think it's something that could sort of help break up that long centerpiece in a positive way. I think that's the last item I have in my notes that I wanted to go over. Actually, I do have one more thing. I have a question. With this accent color now at the corner, could you zoom in on the east elevation, or and sort of show what's happening at that transition point between the colors? Is that a planar transition?
We're proposing it's effectively a seam transition of the same material, just a different color in plane at that point on the east elevation.
It could work. Is this fin is projecting out from the lighter color like the other corner?
It is projecting out a little bit, yes. It's both insetting and projecting out a bit to accentuate it.
Okay. Do you think we could look at it would work, or it makes sense to like if this actually sort of came out a little bit at the corner, if
Wrapped the corner.
Yeah, and sort of it carried through at a low angle. I mean, it could, I especially given what you're doing on the other bookend. I think it feels a little odd to transition in plane, even with a seam detail. So I do wonder if you could finesse that kind of fin concept to be the transition point.
Yeah, we can look at that.
It's a detail we need to add.
Yeah. But yeah, with that, definitively, I think that wraps up our final recommendations and discussion for tonight. As always, really appreciate the work that you've done, taking input from a variety of sources. I particularly want to compliment the work done on the streetscape and pedestrian amenities. I think it's going to give a sense of place and opportunity to folks who live there, and also to folks who are passing by in the area. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And that wraps up item 2.1. We are going to move over to item 2.2, and I'm going to ask for everyone's patience while I promote and demote and do all the organizational virtual back of house tasks. So one moment. And Miriam or Grush, I have two Prasad listings in the attendee list. I'm going to take a guess, but on which I need to promote.
Rebecca, I think it's just Prasad, no last name.
Okay. Let me know if I promoted the wrong person. I guess Prasad will let us know too. or how about this? Would the Prasad who's representing this project use the raise hand function right now? I can learn something. Thank you. Okay. And please accept the promotion to panelist when you get that button. Perfect. Okay. Great. So welcome back. For anyone in the audience who's not associated with this project, I'm not sure if that is anyone, but this is 1332 Park Drive, which is a planned unit development and development review permit to construct a 3-unit small lot single family development. So really different from the application that we just finished reviewing. This project is also returning for final recommendations. Before opening up for any public comment we may have, I'll just ask the applicant team if you have a presentation, a short presentation for us today, and if so, you're welcome to share the screen now. We're running a little slow, but should have time for a presentation that really highlight what you're trying to accomplish with the revisions that you've made, which we've had a chance to review, Linda and I ourselves ahead of this meeting. So take it away. You should be able to share your screen.
Okay, can you?
Yeah, I appreciate if I can share my screen.
Okay.
Before Glush and Mariam, I would like to say that after the last DRC, we went through a lot of iterations with the planning department and made several changes as per the recommendations. And before presents, I would like to thank Ellen Yao, who was our previous planner, and for a great support. And we're looking forward for the same kind of support from Mr. Jeffrey. So thank you, Ellen, and welcome, Jeffrey.
So can I start to explain our changes?
Definitely, go for it, Gush.
Okay. Hi, my name is Gulush Dada. I'm designer of this project. So I don't want to go so detailed, just concentrate on what changes we did, how we did. And meanwhile, we got some comments on Thursday. We really tried hard, even last night, to finish all these things, but you don't have those package in your hand. So Mariam will share all the changes we made it also.
Yeah, and I would just before you dive into that, just DRC review and staff review are kind of on parallel tracks, but they don't always fully sync up. So planning staff has to provide comment letters within 30 days of an application submittal, and so often what ends up happening is the DRC may end up commenting on things that you read in your comment letter from staff just because they are of overlapping interest, but DRC comments sort of build on those staff level comments. It's not an expectation that you would have to address every staff comment before coming to DRC. So we understand the.
I know. I mean, Jeffrey told us that too, but we tried because we really want to get going with the project. So at least you can see the changes, what we did. I mean, it is, I think it will help the meeting.
Okay, great.
So we start our design with these strategies as we see neighboring property with shared driveway, develop 3 houses with craftsman style. For neighborhood compatibility, we also propose 3 houses with similar footprints, with small ADU attached and similar building masses. We also provide all required parking areas, open space areas, and backyard for each unit. See picture 1, site plan we had for the design, our design strategy, almost same footprints. Can you share? Mm-hmm. Okay. All 3 buildings are 2 stories and most part of the 2nd floor setback in for better daylight access to each building. All are low profile with some wall breaks to prevent big masses. So existing lot is 13,500 square foot with existing old building, 1,100 square foot old building inside. This will be demolished before our new construction of these three buildings start. After we discuss our design many times with the city officials, somehow we couldn't satisfy city with three different styles that we had previously. Meanwhile, we couldn't decide to authentic style of Mediterranean or French that would create big contrast with neighbors' houses because they are much simpler styles. City official also encouraged us toward the prairie style, but this style always look nicer in large lands with very large overhangs. Here we have very small setbacks. I thought the roof might get so close to each other, clash, and then it won't look good as much as we expect, you know, and block the daylights also between houses. So then we decided to have three buildings in contemporary styles. So you can see, perfect for small lands and small houses. Same time, we will have more consistency with neighbors and more consistency between houses. Contemporary style, usually defined as less restrictive, can incorporate different style, not rooted in any time period architecture, mostly reflects architectural trends of the moment. While we are influenced from beginning and mid-20th century modernism, use all of other elements represent today's building trends. And characteristic of contemporary architecture is, one by one I'm going, so how we use, I'm trying to explain. New materials, these can be local and recycled building materials. So we are using recycled smooth stucco with sharp corners. Some interior materials also will be recycled. As local materials, wood siding will be used more contemporary way and more natural look. We use some natural ledge stone as accent walls on facades for more natural and contemporary look of the buildings. Large windows, mostly placed non-symmetrically in contemporary architecture. Our windows will be energy efficient with dark, thin sashes and few grids as today's trend. We tried some large and regular windows for each room necessities. I mean, if rooms are high and big, so we would put the bigger windows, larger windows. They are not replaced symmetrically. In some area, we add corner windows as this style characteristic. Again, see picture 3. So we highlighted the windows. Interesting, another characteristic, interesting composition of volumes and asymmetrical facades. Again, as you see, we also obeyed this characteristic we mix stone, wood, stucco with different composition on each building, and add 4K structural aluminum porches added more interest to our facades. We paid a lot of attention from beginning to our houses not become boxy looking buildings, with setting back second floor as much as we can, having mostly horizontal lines over first floor, and be able to create vertical element in living room. Lot A and B creates more balance and interesting composition, especially when we change the material on this, make more attractive. Again, our dark color aluminum porches or balconies complete the design while they are less in the masses. See picture 2 and 4. So open floor plans, another characteristic. We always follow this trend as new lifestyle of new generation, I can say, especially in smaller houses, gives more airy, happy feelings. For enhancing this feeling even more, we raised living room heights little more with larger windows. I wish we could do the same thing in Lot C, but we couldn't do it because of square footage and setback limits. Another characteristic, clean lines and neatness. Again, we paid attention to have not so much different lines. Most of our lines are clean horizontal lines on second floor, roof lines with large overhangs. We didn't use any regular roof above first floor, only flat roof for more neatness and contemporary look. And adding some neat vertical squares with higher living rooms creates best contrast with nice proportion on buildings. Of course, this is my opinion. See picture 4. Environmental consideration with using energy efficient heating, cooling system, and sustainable materials, etc. All these nowadays in city requirements, and we will be providing in green building checklist. After all this time, we are not applying any exception for setbacks and other things. We made many adjustments and changes on our plans to comply with minimum setback requirement. We really tried and spent a lot of time this time to provide all the requests by city official, even if in the beginning we thought we can definitely get setback exception like other neighbor property did. I hope you appreciate our hard work this time and like the design, and let us proceed toward the building department on our projects. Thanks for all your help.
Thank you, Bush. Appreciate the thorough presentation and quick at that as well. So let me just quickly turn to our small attendee list. I know there's one staff member there, but if anyone in the audience does wish to ask any questions or share comments, please raise your hand now. Okay, seeing no one with a raised hand, I'll bring it back to DRC body. Yeah, I think, and Linda can jump in if she disagrees. We both observed that some of the challenges that we talked with you about in the prior proposal have made a lot of progress in the change that you made to the architectural style of the buildings. And so just wanted to start off with commending you on the work done, as well as addressing the setback issue, which I recall did come up as well at the last DRC. So there are some final, much more detailed things that I think we're gonna have today for you as far as final recommendations. I wanted to start off by commending you on the progress made since the last DRC. Before we dive into the buildings, there are a few site and landscape design related items that I'm gonna just bash through that are part of our final recommendations. I think most of these are going to be familiar with to you because staff may have already raised them with you. The first thing is, and I know you're trying to get to public hearings as quickly as possible, and we want to help with that, but I would highly advise making sure that you're consistently updating your architectural site plans, landscape site plans, and civil drawings to show the tree preservation that you're going to be doing, particularly along the Park Drive frontage and the resultant sidewalk condition that will facilitate the tree preservation. We get so many comments from community members about wanting tree preservation, and so the recommendation for making sure that that all of the plans consistently show it is twofold. One, to avoid folks unnecessarily making public comment when you get the public hearing, wanting tree preservation and being confused when they see inconsistent stuff in the plans. So like, own what you're doing. It should be celebrated. And two, it also avoids confusion down the line. Jeff better not be leaving us anytime soon, but it's it's really useful just to make sure that the plans that we're taking to public hearing, like show correctly what your proposal is. So, please work with them on that. Kind of similarly, we do need an overall planting plan. I know that you have several trees that you're proposing, and staff will work with you on locations and making sure that we understand what the canopy is, because our community has big goals as far as tree canopy. Jeff may have some recommendations for you on slight adjustments to tree locations, but we also need what we call understory planting. That's like your shrubs and your ground covers. We need that planting plan, and you should focus on, and you may have heard me bring this up on the last project, focus on drought tolerant and California native plants. Our city council has established a really, I think, great aspirational goal of having 75% of the plant material. So the overall plants in your palette, whether it's trees or shrubs or native grasses, to be California natives. So that's really important to the community. You'll have a condition of approval for that no matter what, but it's important for us to understand what your objective is as far as sort of the understory, not just the tree plantings at a high level. And we want it to be water efficient, but we also don't want it to be barren. So we also wanted to just spend a little bit of time focusing on that area around the guest parking space that's kind of sandwiched in between units, B and C, because I know you have a really tight site plan there.
Yeah, in fact, we already even did the rendering of that part.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. So you think you'll be able to do something like a grasscrete or an open?
Of course,
structure? Okay.
Easily we can do.
Okay. Yeah, can you go back to that revised site plan? Yeah, that looks a lot better. So much
That does. Yeah, much better.
Okay. And can you, let's see, is this, I'm trying to see, is this like the 18-foot line right here?
Yes.
Okay, so you have a little bit of space here. I would just recommend like maybe notching out that planter there, because I think you guys still have trash storage further back, right? Bin storage in the side yard. Is that right?
Right.
Um,
Can I?
we have different areas.
Yeah, we have optional possible location.
I mean, most probably we can change the location. Yeah.
Building
Okay.
C trash recycling.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that could work as well. If you do shift it to that location, I would just give it maybe an attractive kind of wood enclosure.
Exactly, enclosure.
Yeah, just so that folks aren't staring at bins. It also helps keep it secure. Some sort of like the opportunity to lock it so folks aren't getting into it too. I think that could work, but another option if you wanted to keep it in that side yard like you do on other parcels is just like I said, because you've pushed back that garage and you have a gap there. If you just stopped that planter area a few feet short of the front of the garage, you should be able to whoever lives there should be able to roll bins out on through their driveway where they actually are going to be able to control who's there. Like in a guest parking space, it could be a neighbor, could be someone who's just not there at the moment. And so yeah, I think you have two good options there. But overall, that's a great change, and I think we support that. Linda, you concur? I think we might have lost your audio.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm having some trouble with the audio. It's breaking up quite a bit, so.
Okay. But yeah, the initial change you've made to the grasscrete, and I think, one of those two options that we just talked about for the resident of Unit C to be able to roll out bins would be effective. And you should work with Jeff on the final concept. Let's see. Yeah, I think the final kind of landscape comment we have is actually a little bit more related to building design. So I'm gonna hold off on that for now. But you know, in general, I think the takeaway is, you know, you're doing good things with the site plan, including these most recent revisions. We just want to tighten things up a little bit more to make sure that the final plan set that goes to public hearings really celebrates the good moves that you guys are folding into the project proposal. So Jeff will have notes, and he'll be able to work with you after this meeting to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. On the buildings, I think there are a few areas that we want to touch on before I get into this, and I'm only bringing it up because I know Jeff. Jeff told me he mentioned it to you guys is because it made it a little bit confusing for Linda and my review is the mislabeling of the elevations, you know, north versus south. That's another thing just to make sure you correct in the final plan set, because we want to try to avoid confusing members of the public.
Yeah, we corrected already.
Okay, great. But the kind of areas that we want to talk with you about right now today with final recommendations are some of the high volume spaces that you have, the porch and entry designs, a couple relatively minor, I think, roof design tweaks that we were recommending, and then a couple topics connected to your color, materials, and detailing proposals. So Linda, do you have thoughts on where to start?
Well, sometimes it's sort of easier to deal with renderings, because the renderings are, yeah. And just looking at these, I'm gonna start on the right-hand side. That's Unit A. We'll call it Unit A, right? So one thing it seemed on this one is that the height of the garage roof is really tall, and it seems to draw a lot more attention to that garage area.
Full picture.
Maybe if we can go back to that other, the elevator. Yeah, like the front elevator. Yeah,
Yeah, if you could put you had a sheet up
Yeah,
originally that showed it kind of front on.
Yes.
Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Yes, that one. Yes.
You can zoom.
That there you can see that garage roof is quite high. It's different because you've got a deck over it. And so, and with the glass railing, it doesn't feel like you're emphasizing the appearance of the garage as much. On the one to the right, on the Unit A, because that parapet is so high, it looks like the roof of the garage is being emphasized. And I don't believe you've got a deck above there. So it seems that the roof of the garage could be lowered so that it de-emphasizes the garage.
Yeah, and ordinarily we like to see like alignment between sort of features at the first floor, and we'll have a comment about that, I think, on Unit A a little bit later. But for the garage in particular, that would be the one location where we think it makes sense to lower, and you could, kind of establish a relationship or a sort of a datum point for the lower kind of garage height, next to it even. Right. Just to de-emphasize the garage on unit A. It's
Yes.
nice that it has the stone on it, but it's just a little bit too high volume. And it's not needed. So that's one of our recommendations for unit A today.
And there's another thing that I noticed that I believe was jumping out at me on the design drawings that we had, and I believe you've corrected it on here, is that side light to the entry door of the ADU, that was like the header of it was lower than the header of the door, and this looks so much better when they're aligned, and I think that header on the window also needs to align. So it's little things like that, you know, they're little tweaks, but they do make a big difference in how it looks.
Yeah, of course, this is just a drawing stuff.
Yeah. And then if we go, well, we might as well stay on this. I'm going to jump over to building B. Is the
Focus on the
the front porch on this one, that I think it's interesting what you've done with that sort of L-shaped form where the roof of the porch comes around, and I think that's a nice contemporary statement. I think that the post of it feels heavy because the post vertical element is so much thicker than the fascia of the roof deck itself. So I think you need to look at some of your proportions on that, because it feels very heavy.
Yeah,
And
that should be same. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe on the drawings, let me see. Were you proposing that these fascias on the porches, that's stucco? I thought I saw a note that proposed that as stucco, which doesn't seem right. It seems like it needs to be metal.
That was the old drawing. It was mislabeled.
Okay.
It is not stucco, it is metal.
Yeah, okay, great.
We already corrected those, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
I think the other thing we wanted to talk with you about, and I think you're starting to make some changes that I was noticing in those 3Ds, is that, you know, the porch overhang that you had in the drawings we reviewed for building B seemed like a kind of a great, I wouldn't call it a starting point, but a great reference point for treating each of the entries that face the driveway. And the reason I say each of them is because our small lot single family guidelines really speak to how certain features, and I think porches are actually one of the things that's highlighted, can serve as kind of like a unifying design element, even when there's some differences in the design of each of the buildings. But we had some recommendations for some further tweaks. Linda just touched on one of those, the proportions of the column versus the overhang and the lack of clarity, because your material sheet showed metal fascia, but you had the markup or note on your plans that said stucco. The other thing we wanted to recommend, and it's a little, I think it's not quite there here, but is pulling this overhang out a little bit more to actually function more like a porch roof. It seems quite a bit shorter than the edge of the landing, and so we want to try to beef up the detailing that both will make that landing area be sort of more livable and usable, and sort of add design character to the project.
So enlarge this area.
Yeah, so it's like the column came forward a little bit more, the overhang came forward a little bit more. I think that would help. Another idea we had, and it was really wonderful, again, to have those photo examples, is we were kind of inspired by what we saw in those photos. And it seems like, with some exceptions, like the stone accent is used in a couple really specific ways, the stone material, one of which is around entries. So we wanted to suggest that you look at actually integrating the stone accent a little bit more fully into the porch. And I'm gonna do my best to do a markup to kind of explain a little bit more about what I'm talking about. But like the thought was like, if this stone accent wall actually sort of came out a little bit more and created kind of like a side wall for the, wow, my computer's also being really fussy. And actually created kind of like a side wall for the porch. I think one of the photos that you had in your project description did something like that. It was a little shorter, and then you'd have like, you know, this intersecting roof form. We thought that might be really, really nice, and it'd be a slightly different way of using the stone accent on this unit, but could be really attractive. And you know, if you needed to or wanted to for light, you could even do like a punched opening in the side that maybe is like the same proportion as that window there, to let like additional light in. But the idea of this like this L overhang and like a stone wall accent could be a really kind of classy, kind of mid-century, you know, like modernist take on a porch to really sort of celebrate the entries a little bit more. And you could vary it.
That's nice.
You could vary it between the units, right? Like maybe this one gets the taller one, and like these other entries get like, you know, like more of a low wall that functions kind of like a, you know, a railing of sort. Like I think you guys probably could have some great ideas there, but the combination of the L and sort of this stone accent wall could be really awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would add a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, the idea is to really kind of like celebrate the entries and then use a few tools that you can maybe tweak and do slightly differently on like 2 versus, you know, 1, to really give identity to those entries. And it's sort of, I think, all really compatible with the style that you're proposing already. We also had a related recommendation for you have one primary unit entry that faces the public street, Park Drive, on unit A. I don't know if you have a good graphic, a 3D showing that.
Not A. Okay.
The thing that we observed here is that where you have the columns, you have this like really like good sized porch, which I think could be a really great thing for the unit, but the columns kind of get in the way. They're in the middle of that landing.
Yeah.
So you know, you could, if you brought them out a little bit further, you know, kind of similar to what we were talking about for the other porches. You could create more usable area there, and then you know, decide what you think makes the most sense, like whether you think, you know, a metal railing or something might be nice. Sometimes people like that kind of protected porch because they feel like it's more comfortable.
Little more privacy.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that the key thing is really to just, you know, pull those columns forward so that you actually have a usable landing area. I know people like, I see a lot of strollers stored on porches, but even you know, a couple seats to enjoy a happy hour drink in the Mountain View climate would be great.
Okay, it would be okay. I mean, we like that too.
Yeah. And then just the final porch comment is, you know, we talked about, you know, how we would recommend sort of further adjustments to what you started to put at units B and C, but we'd like to see you carry that design idea over to the driveway facing entry on unit A. I think our reaction was that this puts a little bit too much emphasis on the balcony on the second floor. And the thing that we want the design to emphasize is that ground level entry. So, you know, I think if you can incorporate that porch concept, my initial thought was that probably the balcony should just recess further and be like part of that white wall plane above it. So the, that parapet cap is just continuous. But if you think that you could find a way to integrate that balcony with a porch statement, then I think we'd be open to looking at that. I think it just might be simpler if like a shallower balcony was enclosed by that white stucco wall. Linda, do you have any thoughts?
Well, the other thought I had about it was where you've got this planter coming around, this low planter, and maybe there's a way to introduce a planter, maybe a little taller planter on the sides of that porch, because I think there's a little difficulty with the fact that the main unit for the house is facing the street where there is where there is a big porch. This entry really goes into the ADU, right? So I would think you don't want to mistake the main entry to the house as being the ADU entry. So I think there's something that could be done there, maybe again with planters, something that gives a little more privacy on that porch, so people would be happy sitting out there. But again, it doesn't confuse where the main house entry is. Okay, so that was something that I thought was a little confusing about it, but that it just needs to be tweaked to
so maybe it could be like planter sidewall for the porch here, and then like this kind of goes away, right? And then
maybe something like that. Yeah.
Oh, this is a really bad mark. I apologize. My drawing skills are not very good today. There may be something paired on the other side is the idea. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be much nicer if we have that higher. In fact, in first design, I think we had that higher planter bed. I don't know how we came to lower later.
Yeah.
Higher, definitely it will just give more continuous and a connected feeling with the porch.
Yeah.
And then balcony, easily we can recess in a line. If we don't want to emphasize that entrance, that's okay. If we are bringing the other one more further.
Well, I think what we want to do is like de-emphasize, like integrate the balcony and then like pull some, one of the porch concepts so that the overhang is really just about, the like giving some shade and improving the usability of the stoop entry there. And then, maybe instead of, we had talked about like the higher wall here, maybe it's like what Linda said, you have like, a planter sidewall on this porch, and like the column integrates with the planter or something like that. And then, this is just like normal shrubbery, so that on unit A, you have stone that's really highlighting the entries, and then it's, just normal landscaping in between them. I think that could be really classy.
So you are suggesting to totally eliminate the balcony or balcony railings?
We were saying like if it's not enough space to be a like usable balcony on the second floor, I think we're saying like integrate it with the white stucco wall to either side, like this area. But then we're still saying that it would be useful for you to put like one of the L-shaped covers on the entry.
Okay.
But with using the second floor balcony as like a partial cover on the driveway facing entry, it was only emphasizing the second floor. To us, it wasn't really highlighting the entry effectively. So our recommendation is to do something more like you're doing on units B and C here.
Okay.
How about if we create a balcony on top of the garage?
But we
Instead.
don't have space over there. We don't. Anyway, we'll look at that.
Yeah.
We can maybe discuss.
Let's see. One final just note that because it's porch connected on the stone is I think, Linda, if you're just looking at the renderings here, how does that look to you? One of the concerns that we had looking at the photo you had of the proposed stone and the material board was just that it didn't seem quite as crisp and clean as we would want to see given the style that you have. That sort of a
Yes.
crisper kind of ledge stone seems more appropriate.
Yes, it has to be ledge stone. This looks
Yeah.
like they didn't have any other hatch for
Yeah.
ledge stone.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, we'll make sure that Jeff reflects that in his conditions, and you'll have an opportunity to get like some physical samples and a small mock-up
Yes,
for him
yes.
to see in the field so that you guys can finalize the spec.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's
it
good.
sounds
Yeah.
like you know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yes.
Um,
And then I guess one other thing, well, this is kind of more related to landscape, but since we're looking at this rendering, it looks like you're still evolving the design of your fences. Because I think what was shown on our drawings looked a little, what do I want to say? It looks a little off the
Old-fashioned.
yeah.
it looks sort of, nothing that really reflects this design style. So that's something I would say, just keep working on that, something that's going to reflect more of this more contemporary design style on your fencing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that, a black iron fence is fine. It just needs to be in keeping with this design style.
And then we changed the building C also. I mean, we pushed the garage in
Mhm.
a lot. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and then you guys suggested like a L shape, like a plan B. So having some stone. So we add that stone also. So
Yeah.
how do you like those?
Yeah, I think it looks a lot better. I think
Yeah.
we have a similar comment on like pulling the overhang out to give the stoop protection and usability and sort of more prominence. And you might want to, you might have to kind of reevaluate what carrying it all the way over the garage looks like. If you're pulling it forward, that might be a little bit much for the garage. Because it would be super deep at that point. But this is a strong step, I think, in the right direction.
Yeah.
I mean, because it was too, blank and too massive, 2-story high. So that's the reason I wanted to break with that porch over the garage, even over the garage also.
Yeah.
So it gives to garage a little bit less importance,
Yeah. So the other thing you could do, like, since we were just talking about how like this probably wants to come out a little bit more, is it may be that you just have like a separate little kind of like eyebrow over the garage. So it's not all attached, because I think if you pull the overhang on the porch, like closer to the front edge of the stoop, that's going to end up being like 6 feet of depth by the garage, which I think would be a little bit heavy.
Tough cantilever there. Yeah.
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 Yeah, but we shortened the in front the ADU entrance, so we can have reasonable depth over the garage.
Yeah.
Because we are our real entrance the other side. Can you guys have the 3D,
Oh.
you can
No,
show
no,
that?
so we understand where the entries to the primary unit,
Yeah.
but what we're reviewing and what the public can see when they're looking down the
Mhm.
driveway are those driveway facing entries. And so that's why we're focusing on the design there.
Mhm.
And why, and then secondarily, we want those stoops to feel like really comfortable and usable. Like hopefully we'll, continue to have rain sometimes in the state of California. So having like a fully usable kind of
Eventually, we may have rain.
yeah, but
Yeah.
but yeah, you can see how, how if you made it deeper over the front porch, it would be really super deep over the garage. So,
Yeah.
but I get your point about the blank
That's
wall
nice.
area.
Yeah.
And I bet you could, if you focus that L shape over the stoop entry, and maybe it means you sort of put the column over here, you kind of reverse the pattern. You could just have like a more minimal and like detached eyebrow over the garage. So there's like that relationship between the two, and you're holding the blank space, but you're not creating this like super deep overhang above the garage.
I couldn't understand what you mean with eyebrow.
Oh, like a kind of like more of like a trellis depth, like if you had like a trellis over a garage. Yeah.
Okay,
So like
I understand.
And yeah, if they were just completely separate, I think that could work. So I think there were two more things we wanted to talk about, the living rooms, Linda, and then while we have this view before you move away, like in general, I think we found like the flat roof at the first floor on units A and B, and you have like a hipped roof at floor 2, that worked successfully in those 2 units. The one area, if you could just go back to that page that you just had up, where we thought the flat roof at the first floor wasn't as successful was over here. And I know it's like, it's not completely flat, but it's pretty close to flat. And so our recommendation for that particular section of the building is to introduce like a shed or a hipped roof that matches the 3 and 12 with a little bit of an eave that you have at the second floor, just because the flat roof doesn't feel like it fits in as well in that unit. I think because it's so deep, that the building area is a much deeper proportion than other locations where you've got a flat roof at the first floor.
How about if we can make that area more higher, like the other area? Can you show the other side? Because there was some, really problems on the entrance of building C. Yeah. Could you bring the entrance? Building C. Building C. Okay. You see this area, I raised it because I wanted to have, stuff in here, yeah. I wanted to have that porch. In fact, that porch can be more longer. Yeah. To just hit the wall, not to clash with the gutters we are providing in here. So right. I think it is maybe better to just continue this area with the area above. Because if we do any hip roof in here, it's gonna be worse, I think. Yeah. Just like continue this area, just the same line. Then it will more connect and tie with the front elevation also. These are the things we were really, after that comment, we were working almost last minute. So
yeah, that might work. I would ask you to show that change to Jeff and get his thought. The other thing though is if you raise that height, then you could do it would be easier for you to sort of integrate a roof form that covers that entire area, and you'd avoid
Yeah.
that cricket issue that you would otherwise have here, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if it might work if you raise the height there, and then work with Jeff on whether that seems to resolve the issue, or whether you should still look at doing a shed or a hipped roof there.
Okay.
And then could you maybe could you, since you have the 3D model up, could you sort of zoom us back out again and get us more towards
All three of them.
yeah,
From private road.
yeah, maybe could you shift it around so that we're seeing the unit A living room.
Unit A living room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because I think that's the easiest place to talk about what we want to talk about with you there.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
But I think
Linda, you want to give my voice a break? I'm starting to get a little hoarse. I need some more water.
Sorry.
No, if your audio is working, that'd be great.
So,
okay.
so in the living room, I guess I'm blanking on what that was on this particular building. Was it the idea of lowering the ceiling in the living room?
That was your comment, but I mean, in reality, if we do the raise, such a small living room, I mean, it can make it much airy and better looking inside. And outside also, we have one continuous, just a horizontal line. It gives little bit more vertical line to create the contrast. This was my opinion. I always like that horizontal and vertical compositions. But anyway, I'm listening to you guys.
Yeah, and I think that there are designs that do that more that do that effectively. I agree with you, Glush. There's often something that is nice to have sort of a vertical element that interrupts overly long facades. But I think with the shape of these buildings and the size of these buildings, what it ends up doing is sort of standing out in a way that sort of detracts from some of the other moves that you have, like this really strong primary, like principal dwelling unit porch. And you know, there are also some things that we were noting that create kind of a weird condition on the interior. So on like unit B, which I'll get to in a minute, but I think our recommendation when we were looking at it is that this is one of those occasions where it would be better to just simplify.
To align with the all other areas.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose one other way to handle it is looking at that idea of a shed roof, like we were talking about on the other end of the other building, the building C, that maybe there's a way to shed it so that it's still high at one end of the living room and then it sheds down, and somehow that relates to the porch of that entry. I don't know. I mean, it's just another thought, but with this contemporary expression, you can introduce sheds sometimes and have that work. So that's another thought. As long as if you're trying to really keep some additional height in that living room, as long as you can walls and the roofs to come together reasonably so that you don't get something strange going on.
Yeah, I think you'd have to it would have to kind of go like that, probably across the facade. Like you want to integrate it, I think, with the roof form, so the left over the porch.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It would have to go from low there to high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
the other thing to
might be
note
a
is
way.
like even if yeah, even if you were to reduce the height, of the living room to that, like, was it 12.5 line, because you don't have second floor above it, like you're still gonna have an opportunity for some really like high volume space there.
Mhm.
Yes, I thought about that too. Yeah.
And it gives you I think a nice proportion to do something like what you have over here. You've got this like really nice kind of lintel detail that like creates kind of like a clear story or transom window with like the picture window below. And
Yeah.
I thought that would be really good to carry through, so that there's like internal consistency within the living room. Like you're not looking at one wall and having a different condition. It also gives people an opportunity to like leave the upper window area kind of open to let light in, but like this is an opportunity to like a place to install blinds or shades or things for privacy. But even if you lowered that line to about 12.5, I think you'd still have enough vertical clearance to do like a really nice picture window and lintel and clear story, probably still again sort of a bad markup, kind of modeled on what you have there. And you could have like just a really clean dividing line. It would be, I think, pretty appropriate to the style.
Yeah, I understand. I think we can do that.
Yeah.
Because I rather to just align all these, because that in the lower flat roof, we need to have align all the gutters together somehow.
Exactly.
And it has to look clean. And then, but if this vertical element, it was freestanding, that time shed roof could be nice, but it is not freestanding. It won't give you
got to integrate with the rest.
No, exactly. It's not going to look good, it's gonna, it has to maybe just connect with the others. I mean, I think lowering and then just having higher windows as much as we can, that would be better.
And if you did still want a little bit of height variation on this facade, like you could have like alignment sort of at this back edge, and then like maybe slightly drop the height on the porch so that it's sort of secondary, sits just below the body of the building behind it. That would be another option if you still wanted to maintain a little bit of up and down along the facade. Because I think you have like another, like below this bottom edge here, you still have like another foot or more before you get to like the top of the door, as an example. So that's another thing to play around with. If you wanted to preserve that height variation.
In fact, I was thinking maybe just a little bit higher entrance porch. No?
Yeah, I don't know if this area really needs that. I feel like most of the homes that I saw when I drove around that neighborhood tend to have like a little bit simpler and quieter. I think the horizontal distance that you have is the real selling point on that porch. And I think I think it's going to be one of those things that future owner is really going to love. And that's the thing I would play up, is that horizontal scale.
I think horizontal is just the horizontal. It's just better.
Yeah. And then I think the final thing we had was just a little bit of commentary on materials. I think things looked a lot better in these in these renderings. Linda, you and I had talked a little bit about whether it just made sense, especially with the height change we were just talking about in the living room.
Mhm.
If the sort of the stucco just pulled through at the first floor on Unit A along Park Drive. Are you still thinking that would make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, let's see if we look at one of those renderings again. The renderings are really the best way
Could
to
you bring
look
up
at.
the current 3D model that you had? I think that might be the easiest thing to use.
This is the latest rendering we
Okay.
have right now on screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could
That's the,
Can you show the Park Drive facade?
yeah, Park Drive. No, oh, not Park Drive, was that? Yeah, okay, this one, yeah. This is, yeah, Park Drive. I mean, they don't have more than this.
Okay. So I think one of the things that we were thinking, particularly in view of what we were just talking about with the living room, is if because you're proposing such a nice stucco finish, if the stucco just
Yeah.
kind of pulled through, so you had stucco at that living room.
Oh, instead of changing, let me look at the
Yeah,
elevations.
instead of changing to wood siding at the living room.
Let me go back and look at the elevations.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, this is that we have it in front of us on the screen, Linda. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it kind of depends on
Yeah.
what you end up doing with that mass of the living room.
Yeah.
Because looking at it like this, to me, it's okay. Because then that wood wraps around the back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't remember, it might not have initially. Yeah, I think even if it drops, it could work. The porch kind of serves as a dividing line. And there's kind of like, there's a little bit of a syncopated pattern that you get here, top and bottom.
Exactly, that's why I thought. I mean, I have to repeat somewhere else. Otherwise, that
Yeah.
top one, it's gonna be so lonely.
Yeah,
I think
I think if you got rid of it here, you'd probably want to like pull the siding through here, but I think it could work as I'm seeing here. This feels a little bit better than especially if you get that alignment here, like this kind of thing is a little
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's fine. Looking at these are really helpful, by the way. Thank you for bringing this full 3D that we can look around at. This is very helpful.
So yeah, I think, with the changes that you've made and you're able to share with us today, like the material application is feeling a little bit better. I think we'll want to address that high volume issue on each of the units. I think Jeff probably has really detailed notes to follow up with you on afterwards. Most of our focus really was on those porch entry conditions, and it was really useful. Thank you for putting in the hard work to try to make some initial updates between when you got the letter and today, because it ended up really helping our conversation. So thank you for that. I think these should be, hopefully it sounds like you feel like these are pretty straightforward items that you can address. So work with Jeff on which ones maybe are most important to get into the next and final application submittal you make. Versus things that he can address through like standard design conditions of approval. Because like I said earlier, we want to make sure that you guys are on a good path to getting to your final public hearings. And I think today's conversation, I'm feeling really good about where things are heading with the design. So I think that wraps things up for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I think we wanted to clarify that this is the last DRC meeting that they would come to. The rest is just going to be worked out with staff, right?
Exactly.
Rebecca?
Okay, good.
That you knew that. Okay, great.
Yep. No, that's 100% the case. We want to, you've made it a long way, and we want to continue that good positive momentum. So let's
Yes.
get this wrapped up with you. We're happy that you've made it thus far, and are excited to see the final revisions. Or Jeff will see them and I'll see them, but Linda will only see them when we show her photos of the built product. So
She can come to the property afterwards.
There we go.
you know, I'm always wandering the city just to see how projects have turned out. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this one turns out down the line. So
Yeah. Nice design.
Thank you. Thank you.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And
Yeah,
this adjourns today's
one
meeting.
question, one point, just one thing I want to know. Our civil engineer pointed out to me that by mistake,